Alright, so I always have a fair amount of people asking me what my graphical settings are on both DayZ Standalone and ARMA 2. Every now and again people ask me what my keybinds are in both those games, so I thought I'd dedicate one video to covering all that. And then to top this video off, I'm going to do a little FAQ. So first I'm going to be starting off with DayZ Standalone. First the graphical settings, then the keybinds. Then ARMA 2 graphical settings, and then ARMA 2 keybinds. And to top it off, the FAQ. You can skip to whichever part you wish to go to, because I will put up like little timestamp links in the description. But to start this off, and yeah, before you ask what the Windows 98 theme is all about, well, basically, to record with OBS, I need to disable my arrow theme. So yeah, I'm using Windows Classic on Windows 7. I don't have Windows 8. If you didn't know that, I'm using Windows 7. That's what that's all about. But yeah, if you wish to know what my graphical settings are, really quickly, I always put like a link in the description. If you have any questions about my PC specs, etc., please check out this page first. A lot of people don't seem to really check the descriptions, but most people have like links to things in their descriptions, so yeah. But yeah, that links to like a hardware, software, and settings page, so if you ever wish to know what my hardware was, or my accessories, or my software, or whatever, is there. Graphical settings for both those games is also there. So yeah, this actually covers most of everything except the keybinds. But yeah, I will be going into the games themselves to show off the graphical settings too. But if you just want to go there now really quickly, you can just use this. Now I should also say that I don't claim to be an expert. These are just the video settings I roll with. In DayZ Standalone I've also made some config file changes. In ARMA 2 I didn't do any of that, but in DayZ Standalone there's a few things in the config files you can change to give you more FPS, which I will also be going into, but we're going to start off within the game itself. So we go to video settings, user interface, pretty standard, just use your monitor resolution. I of course got a 1080p monitor, very small interface size. That's up to personal preference, and 60:9 since that's the aspect ratio my monitor uses. That may vary depending on what monitor you use. Textures, video memory, put that on auto. I use the very highest settings of the textures because I like textures. Quality, some of these things are changed within the config files. We will be going into that later, but as for now, just change this to very low. Definitely objects takes away a fair amount of FPS. I put terrain on normal, clouds on very high. I don't think it really matters, but I use the clouds to navigate every now and again. They're supposed to go east. I don't know whether or not they changed that in DayZ Standalone, but at least in ARMA 2 the clouds go east, which you can actually use for navigating. It's pretty useful if you don't have a compass. Shadows on very low. Textures we already covered. And to rendering, this is actually a big one. I've disabled anti-aliasing, alpha to coverage disabled. Edge smoothing disabled, HDR quality on low, ambient occlusion disabled, post-processing disabled. One thing with post-processing is that it's used as an indication for your health level. So the less health you have, the blurrier your screen will become, which is not really that useful if you're trying to play the game, but it is useful to know that you are on low health. But normally, if you're paying attention, you can sort of figure out what your health level is. And anytime you lose any health, you should probably try and mitigate that. So to do that, just energize and hydrate yourself to bright green, and then your blood starts regenerating and your health starts regenerating. There's in-depth guides about that, so I'm not going to be going into that, but that's the way you do it. And bloom and rotational blur, just disable that entirely. This page, pretty much everything disabled. Post-processing also makes your game look arguably worse because it blurs everything. Some people like that, I don't, I hate it. Yeah, I think that's about it for the settings here. As for gameplay, I would advise you to disable head bob. It's basically just, well, you see your head bobbing in first person. I don't personally like it. Maybe on a low setting it sorta makes it more realistic, but I don't like it. And audio input volume max, 128 sound sources. Don't know whether or not that makes too much difference, so don't take my word for that. But that's what I use. We'll be going into the config settings now. We're going to go into the controls later, but first the config file settings. Alright, so we're back on our beautiful desktop. So what you need to do is go to your documents. Now this is located under C users your name. This is going to vary. My name is Bart. I don't know what your name is, but Just enter your name there, and then Documents. Should be able to find this. Then go to DayZ, and this is gonna have your player profile name .DayZ profile and DayZ.cfg. Now both of these I changed, so let's start out with DayZ. I'm gonna edit that in Notepad++. If you don't have Notepad++, I would advise you to use that since it's sort of easier. Let's make sure GPU max frames ahead and GPU detected frames ahead is on 1. I think that's the only change I made in this. So just make sure both of those are on 1 and you should be good. Then in your DayZ profile, edit that. And these 3 settings I changed. Scene complexity, I put that on 100,000. I think by default it's on something like 250,000. Shadow Z distance 100 and view distance 1750. Now, I would advise you not to skip out on these options because these are decent frame suckers. Every now and again, this game likes to reset your settings in these files, and I definitely notice a frame difference. Now, one thing I will tell you is that some of these settings might change the distance you can see players at effectively, so beware of that. I posted a video where we sort of have like a standoff battle on the northeast airfield, and I can't see the players on the edge of the airfield. So just beware of that. That might change your long distance view of players. It is sort of different in DayZ standalone compared to ARMA 2, but I do like frames, so that's why I changed those. Nextly, speaking of it reverting it back, there's one thing you can do. Every now and again, in experimental scenes, when the game crashes, it likes to completely reset your settings, which for me is sort of a pain in the ass because I changed a lot of settings. So one way to mitigate that is just go to Properties and make it read-only. So your name, DayZ profile, and DayZ.cfg. Go to Properties, make that read-only. And that should prevent that from happening. Now, one thing I will tell you, if you put it on read-only, and you can't change any of the in-game settings without it reverting back, because it's on read-only. So just beware of that. If you try and change your controls with read-only enabled, it's going to revert back. So, yeah. Now we're going to go to the game again, and I'm going to show you off some of my keybinds. Now, I have a Logitech G500 mouse. So, speaking of the keybinds, I'm not going to explicitly tell you what you should put your keybinds on. I'm just going to tell you some general ideas of how I do things. I'm going to assume you don't have the same mouse as me. If you definitely don't have the amount of mouse buttons I have, you're going to have to change some things around. So I'm just giving you ideas. You shouldn't change everything to my settings because, well, it probably wouldn't make a lot of sense. You have a mouse with 3 buttons. It's not going to work for you. So yeah, we're going to go back to the game now. Alright, so we're back in DayZ standalone. So to go into controls, turn off mouse smoothing. In both ARMA 2 and DayZ standalone, just turn off any smoothing. Yeah, it's not good. I have my sensitivity pretty low because I have a high DPI mouse. I also use Track AR, which doesn't show up right now because I don't have the program enabled. But yeah, I use Track AR, which is like a head tracking thingy. It's probably not going to apply to you because nobody uses Track AR in DayZ standalone. Never mind. Anyways, to go into infantry movement, WASD for walking. One interesting thing which sprinting, fast forward, that's sprinting. By default it's bound to 2 times W. I actually am not a big fan of that keybind because what it means is that to start sprinting, you have to stop because you have to release W. A keybind I like is W plus S, because then you can just roll down your middle finger and you can sprint. One problem with that is though, if you have a keyboard that's not mechanical, your keys might ghost. What that means is that if you have your finger on W plus S, you might not be able to use A and D because you're pressing too many keys in the same region at the same time. Probably not going to be able to do that with like a cheap membrane keyboard. So one other thing you could bind it to is something like space. By default that's your weapon raise key, I think. But again, I'm just giving you ideas about what you can change. This is not a go-to guide. You can change your key settings any way you wish to do so. But just to let you know, I use W plus S most of the times. I also have it bound to space because I use that every now and again. 2 times W is useful for long distance running, but for close encounters when you I can't pronounce that. When you want to run away quickly, it's not preferable for me. So just to let you know. Walker run temporarily, just shift. Maybe by default 2 times shift is toggle. I think that's definitely an Arma 2 thing. I think it's still a standalone thing too. Many of the toggle things I just disable. You definitely don't want to be stuck in walking mode in a firefight, so if you still have walk toggle enabled on 2x shift, disable that. This is all standard. Step over V also standard. One thing I do change is that I have lean toggle enabled on Q and E. I don't hold the key, so if I press Q and E, I toggle lean, and to get out of the leaning animation, I have to press the key again. This might not be perfect for you, because if you mess around with your keys in a firefight, you accidentally press E or Q, you're gonna be stuck walking slowly because you're in the leaning mode. So I like that keybind because you don't have to hold it, but it is dangerous sometimes, so just to let you know. Infantry weapons. This is standard. Hold breath. That's actually an interesting one. If you assign multiple keys to holding breath, you can actually hold your sniper scope perfectly still. This also applies to Arma 2, surprisingly. I've seen a tutorial by Silo, and it's still a thing in this game. So hold breath by default is just holding your second mouse button, your right mouse key. But if you assign a second key to it and you hold both those keys at the same time, it holds your scope perfectly steady no matter how fatigued you are. Pretty interesting. It's sort of a bug. It might be considered sort of cheating, but it's possible, so just let you know. By default, optics is on your right mouse button. If you put it on a different key, what this allows you to do is zoom in by holding your second mouse button and then pressing your optics key to ADS at that point, so you don't have to release your zoom level. It's pretty useful in Arma 2. In DayZ standalone, I suppose it's useful too. Yeah, it's still pretty useful, but I definitely like that in Arma 2, so you can do that. Zeroing is standard. Throwing items, I have my gear on G because I'm used to playing Arma 2, so I have my throw items on tab. Sort of switch around. I think by default throwing is now G, but I changed that. Rest of this is standard. Toggle raise weapon. By default that's space. I got it on a mouse key because I use that quite a lot, so any key I use a lot, I like to put on my mouse key so it's easy to access. Toggle raise weapon is one of those. Toggle view is switching in between your first and third person. I got this on second mouse button, which is your right mouse key. This is a really easy way to switch in between this. I like to go into first person if I'm gonna engage somebody, so I like to have that key very close and easy to access. I think by default it's still on numpad enter. It's kind of too far away, so I like to have it on my mouse. For me, it's second mouse button since I don't use second mouse button for ADSing. Works quite well in DayZ, so you could put it on that or find a key close to your hands, but that's what I use. Then I use zoom out on my mouse too. This is the square brackets, but that's a key I got on my mouse. That's the way set point is set up for me. So again, this is going to be up to your own discretion what you use, since I'm assuming you don't have the same mouse as me. So yeah, I have zoom out on my mouse. What this allows you to do is increase your FOV, which allows you to see more. It's not really as applicable in DayZ as it is in Arma 2, because in DayZ it doesn't zoom out much more than your current FOV level. In Arma 2 it zooms out a fair amount more, so it's actually pretty useful. Rest of this is all default. Look still alt. I disabled free look. I think by default that's still 2x alt. I don't like being stuck in free look, so I just disabled that. Rest of this is all standard. Inventory, gear is G. I think by default it's tab, but I like G since I'm used to Arma 2. Items is still the same. I don't ever use the hotbar though, because it's not really too reliable for me, so yeah, I don't use the hotbar, but it's still default. Show items, left windows. Yeah. I think by default that's title key. I put it on left windows, because why not? This is all default too. I don't really use any of the interactions except pointing every now and again, so I got that on like F1 because I never used that key. I think that was about it. Vehicle, helicopters, vehicle. No, we don't have vehicles as standalone yet, so we don't use that, I don't think. Nothing in multiplayer and commanding, nothing. So that's it for DayZ standalone. Some ideas. Controls in DayZ standalone are not really that in-depth because there's not too many keys to change. I mean, with Arma 2 you got the vehicle, so there's more keys to change to normally have access to a map and a compass and use those two more, so there's more keys to cover in ARMA 2 basically. Alright, so we are in Novi Sobor. So to get in ARMA 2's graphical settings, this is by the way a lot easier than it is in DayZ Standalone, because you don't have to change anything in the CFG files, just this, so surprisingly easier. Anyway, start off with visibility. I put it on 3600. It kind of really doesn't matter if you play DayZ Standalone, because the server limits your visibility anyway. I think it's something below 2000, so this really doesn't matter. Quality preference doesn't matter. Interface resolution and 3D resolution, make sure that's matched, because that's going to make things look better. Texture detail very high. Video memory, put that on default. Anisotropic filtering very high. Anti-aliasing disabled, and ATAG doesn't really matter because I think it's tied to anti-aliasing, so you can disable this, but it's gonna revert back to ARMA 2 trees plus grass I think every time, so yeah, that doesn't really matter. Terrain detail very high, objects detail very low. This is also gonna take away some of the grass in the grassy lands. So I don't know, heli crashes is gonna make things pop out a tad bit more. It might make people a tad bit easier to see. In the DayZ mod, the grass is not put on very high, so it's gonna make things in grass somewhat easier to see. Then again, the draw distance of grass is not really that far, so yeah, it's not really cheating, but it does save you a fair amount of frames. So yeah, put that on very low. Shadow detail very high. I think disabling this saves you a few frames, but I like shadows. HDR quality very high. PPAA. You got the SMAA filter. I think you can also go for FXAA. I can't pronounce words anymore. But these filters are a lot sharper, so they make edges look a bit bad. So I like SMAA. I think it's also better for your frames, maybe. But I will not comment on that because I don't know for sure. Post-processing. Disable that entirely. It's gonna make the background look blurry. Actually, can we go for post-processing? God, blurry. You might not be able to see that on YouTube because it's YouTube and it. Yeah, but it's gonna make everything in the distance look blurry and take away about 10 to 15 frames. Disable that entirely, it's horrible. Interface size very small, that's up to personal preference because it doesn't really do anything. 16 by 9 because that's my monitor. VSync, make sure you disable that because yeah. So those are the settings, the graphical settings. We're gonna go into controls, and this is gonna be a bit more in depth compared to DayZ Standalone because there's more to cover. So we shall endure. But first, make sure that the smoothing is disabled. Just do that. Anyways, WASD is standard. Fast forward, which is printing, I got that. By default, it's 2 times W. I got it on W plus S. Again, same as in DayZ Standalone. If you have a non-mechanical keyboard and you use W plus S, it's better than 2 times W because you don't have to stop to start sprinting again. But you might experience some key ghosting, not being able to use A and D because you're using too many keys in the same region of your keyboard. That might happen if you have a standard keyboard, so you could also put it on space, but I use space for turbo, so I will get into that later actually, but I use W plus S. Now for leaning, I use Q and E to toggle leaning. By default you have to hold it. I like toggling it so I can use A and D to sort of strafe around the corners. But one problem with this again is that you may accidentally press Q or E when you get shot at, and then you're going to be stuck in a walking animation. So just be aware of that. If you use that, you're going to have to be careful that you don't mispress your keys, because then you might be walking in. You're going to get shot. So just be aware of that. Shift again. Disable the toggle. I think by default it's again 2 times shift, so just disable that because you might accidentally press shift twice and then you can be stuck in a walking animation and you don't want that. Lock or zoom, hold second mouse button, that's standard. Toggle raise weapon, 2 times left windows. Never really used that except back when I played DayZ RP, but yeah, nobody plays that anymore, or do they? I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of it, but yeah. You're gonna sign up to something if you play RP. Other than that, I wouldn't ever advise you to unraise your weapons. Not a good idea in DayZ normally. Optics, I got it assigned to mouse button 4, which is a mouse key. By default, that is your right mouse button. I got it on a separate mouse key. What this allows you to do is zoom in by holding your right mouse button and then pressing this key separately to ADS at the same time, so you can take an accurate shot without like reverting your zoom level. It's pretty useful in ARMA 2. This is all default. compass toggle, I got it on a mouse key. In ARMA 2, compass is definitely a really useful tool, so have this close to your hand somewhere. I would advise you to put it on a mouse key. I got mouse button 5 for that, really close to my thumb, so I use that. And at the same time, I use GPS toggle on the same key. So what this allows me to do is press one key and it's gonna bring up both my compass and my GPS at the same time. Pretty useful bind. Binoculars, I got that on tab. I don't like B because it's really close to V, and yeah, it's got me killed sometimes. So I like to put that on tab. Pretty close to your hands. Binocs are a pretty useful tool. So switch gun to handgun. I got it on T, again close to my left hand. I switch to pistols a lot. I'm gonna assume you do the same thing if you play DayZ. So it's one key to assign it to T. I don't think by default it's really assigned to anything. You can use the scroll options, but I got a second monitor, so if I press like my middle mouse button too much, sometimes I accidentally alt tab my game, which is not really what I want. So I got it to like a separate key. Also, I don't really like the scroll options, so yeah. Map, left control, pretty useful. By default it's M, which is a tad bit far away. And in ARMA 2, you're going to use your map quite a lot. It's a useful tool, so keep that one close to your hands. Toggle view, I got that on my right mouse button. Again, if I want to shoot somebody, I usually go to first person, so I got that on my right mouse button. Zoom out, same as in DayZ Standalone, I got that on a mouse key. Here's a square bracket, but that's the way set point works for me. In ARMA 2, it's actually really useful to have that key assigned. I use it quite a lot, so what this allows you to do, if you got it on like a mouse key zoom out, if you hold that key, it's gonna, well, increase the FOV, which allows you to see more around you. In forest areas like that, it allows you to see a lot more. This combined with third person allows you to peek over some very high walls too, so it's definitely a useful key to assign. I use it on my mouse key because I use it quite a lot, so yeah. Holding breath, same as in DayZ Standalone, I got that assigned to two separate keys. It seems to work the same way, so if you hold those two keys at the same time, it seems to really steady your aim a lot, even though you're fatigued. Which might be sort of cheating, but it's pretty useful, I guess. So yeah, I got second mouse button to hold the breath as default, and the mouse button 5, which is the same key as the compass and the GPS. Hold those at the same time, and your scope is pretty much going to be perfectly steady. It's a pretty good bind, I guess. Step over standards, voice over net 2x caps lock, standards. Pretty good bind right here. By default, caps lock is push to talk. But that sometimes causes you to accidentally talk on side chats, so a lot better is to assign caps lock to talk on vehicle channel. Now, vehicle channel allows you to talk over VAN in a vehicle, and if you're outside of a vehicle, it's pretty much direct chat. So using vehicle channel, pretty good bind. You're never going to be speaking over side chat accidentally anymore, and in some servers you get knocked out if you do that. So I would advise you to do that, because there's a lot of people that talk on side chat accidentally, and it's sort of annoying. The rest of this I think is all default. Again, I use track ARs, so those track AR controls. Vehicle controls. This is all standard, I think. Turn in, turn out, get out, and eject. To get out, I use left windows, and to eject, I use 2x left windows. Pretty useful binds. This may conflict with Windows 8, I think. I don't know, in some instances it might have you like alt tab your game. For me, it doesn't do that, so it's a useful bind. So basically what I do, if I want to get out of a car, I don't use the scroll options because that's a tad bit slower. But if the car is stopped, you can just press left windows once and you'll get out. If it's not stopped and still moving, you press that and you're not going to get out of the vehicle, because get out is only an option if the vehicle is perfectly stationary, or somewhat stationary. And 2x left windows allows you to eject, so you're not accidentally going to be ejecting. Left windows is pretty much not a key you're going to accidentally press a lot, so pretty good bind for me. If you just want to get out quickly, just press 2x windows and you're going to be out of the car. Scroll options, not too reliable, so pretty useful bind. Doesn't have to be left windows, you can assign it to something else too. Aircraft control, increase and decrease thrust. I got that on space and left shift because I find it easier to access than Q and Z. I think the default binds are, so that's what I use for that. And then that, I think this is all pretty standard. I fly with WASD. I don't really use the mouse for anything, so yeah. If you ever see me fly a helicopter, I use WASD, so I think I rebound some of these controls. Anyways, if I press W, my nose goes down. If I press D, my nose goes up. If I press D, I'm going to be banking to right. And if I press A, I'm going to be banking to the left. And the pedals I got assigned to Q and E, so I use that for that. Pretty standard controls, I think. Auto hover I got assigned to C, which is not a default bind. It's pretty useful, although I don't really use auto hover all that much. Get out and eject, same binds, and I think that covers aircraft. Bulldozer controls. Not really standard controls. These are the controls that apply if you're using like a free cam, but not too many people use that. I use it for screenshots. Right, last thing I want to cover is turbo. So I'm not sure on which controls this is, but in all controls you can find this key called turbo. Not sure if many people know this, but there's this thing called turbo running. Again, it might be sort of cheaty, but I think a fair amount of people do use it. Basically what you do is you assign a turbo key to something. I use space for this. Turbo in like Overwatch and Overpocket allows you to do those crazy movement things like stick out your middle finger and all that. Not really too useful, but what the turbo key does allow you to do is if you hold the turbo key and you press W, you sprint. You can sprint indefinitely and faster than the standard sprinting speed, so pretty useful. So I didn't know that. Assign the turbo key to something, and I think you do have to have the default 2xW control for this to allow for the sprinting. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I keep that bind anyway. So yeah, assign the turbo key, hold the turbo key, and tap W, and this allows you to sprint faster and indefinitely. And I think that covers the ARMA 2 controls. I think we covered everything. So I guess now we shall move on to the FAQ. Now, I posted on Twitter that I was going to be having an FAQ, but sadly nobody really replied. I think one guy retweeted that tweet. Then again, I'm not really that active on Twitter, which might be a factor here. But I decided to go on 4 questions I thought of myself. Now, there's a fair amount of people that ask questions frequently, but these are the only 4 I could think of off the back of my head. So we're going to cover these 4 questions. So the first question is, where are you from? Question mark. Well, I'm from the Netherlands. I say this a lot, but yeah, some people I think still assume that I'm American. I'm not. I'm 100% Dutch. Yeah, I'm Dutch. How old are you? Question mark. I'm 18 right now. Maybe in a year, if this video is 1 year old, I'm gonna be 19, but I'm still 18 at this point. Then the next question is YouTube your job? Now that's asked quite a lot on Twitch, and the answer is no. I actually got a second job too. I'm not gonna disclose what, but it's a pretty lame job. But yeah, YouTube is just like a side thing, you know. It was a hobby, and yeah, it still is a hobby, but it's also my job, I guess. But yeah, it's not my main job, nor is it really my goal to do YouTube or Twitch full time. Coinciding with that, I should make the announcement that, yeah, I am still a student, so what's gonna happen is that this September I'm gonna start my first year of university, mechanical engineering, bachelor. So, yeah, YouTube is not my job, I'm still a student, and I might be, like an engineer at one point in my lifetime. And then you can trust me, because then I'd be an engineer. Okay, enough with the sarcasm. What does your name stand for was another one I could think of, which might be somewhat interesting, because I assume most people think like, what the fuck is your name all about? BRTT, what is that name? Some people can't even pronounce it, but yeah, I suppose you pronounce my name like BRTTRP. Doesn't really make a lot of sense for most people, I guess. It's sort of symmetrical though, so I guess we have that going for us, but yeah, should probably pick a different name. Anyways, we're stuck with this name, so I encourage you to just call me Bart. I'm not really a big fan of the BRT part, but yeah. My name is Bart, if you didn't know that. So that might also already reveal to you what the name stands for. It's basically just an abbreviation of my first and last name. Now my first name is Bart, my last name is something else, which I won't disclose because I don't want more Facebook requests. TRP, that part is my last name, so it might make more sense to people now. Anyways, those are the 4 questions I could think of. If you have an additional question, I suppose you could ask it in the comments, and I might answer it. Maybe at some point I'll hold a formal FAQ. We shall see, but I think we covered everything in this video. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Hope you found this useful, and yeah, change your settings, because it's worth it.